Hey everyone, today we're starting chapter 3, and the first section in this chapter is to learn how to write equations in slope-intercept form. So if you think back to chapter 2, our goal there was if we are given an equation to be able to graph it. So now we're really just doing the reverse. Now you're going to have a graph and you're going to need to be able to come up with the equation of that line. So quick, we're going to review a couple of terms first. So remember, slope for us, we use the letter M to represent slope, and the formula we use is rise over run. Remember, the rise told us how far up or down we move, and the run told us how far left or right. So, for example, on a graph, if I wanted to find the slope given this graph, I always like to start at the point furthest to the left. So I know to get from here to this point, I would go down 2. So my rise is going to be a -2. And then I run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the right. And since I went right, it's a +5. Now, I know some people look at this a little differently. So just for the sake of talking it through, let's say instead of starting here, I started at this point. Our idea is still the same. I'm still going to think about how far up or down I move. So in this case, I'm going up 2, so my rise is a +2. Now here I'm going to go left 5, so my run is going to be a -5. These two answers mean exactly the same thing. So in other words, -2 over 5 is equal to 2 over a -5, which is the same as pulling the negative out front. So I just wanted to go over that because that's a question that comes up a lot. So we worked with slope in the last chapter, and then we learned slope-intercept form, which we all know looks like this. Y equals mx plus b. Remember when we talked through this, we said that our m was the slope, which we know is rise over run, and that tells us how to move, right? That m we can think of as move along our graph. Now, the b for us was the y-intercept. It's the point where the line crosses. And this was where we begin when we graph a line. So, like I mentioned, we're going to be using slope-intercept form again, but in this chapter, instead of graphing the line, we're going to be given a graph and asked to write the equation. So, at the very basic level, here's what a problem might look like. So remember, our goal is to write the equation in slope-intercept form of the line. So my answer should be an equation that's in this form. Now, these are nice and simple because I've been given the slope. I know the slope in slope-intercept form is my m, and I know the y-intercept is the b. So now I just plug these values into our slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. So for number 1, I'm replacing my m with a -2, so I have y equals -2x, and my b is a 5, so +5. And there's my equation. Similar idea here. My slope now is a +4. My y-intercept, or my b, is a -3. So I'm going to go back to slope-intercept form, and I have y equals, my m is a +4, and x. Now, since this is -3, I don't want to write plus a -3. I'm just going to write -3. All right, So now in the next set, here's where we're given the graph and we have to come up with the equation. Again, our final goal is getting this equation in slope-intercept form. So let's see if we can figure out the pieces given the graph. So the first thing I'm going to do is find the slope, and that's just like the review at the top of these notes. So my slope, if I'm going from this point to this point, I have to go down 2. So my rise is a -2. Then I'm going to the right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So my slope is a -2 over 5. Now my y-intercept is, we said, the point where I cross the y-axis. So if this is my y-axis, I can see my y-intercept right here, which looks like 1, 2, 3 for that value. Once I've found those two things, now I have a problem just like here. I'm just going to plug that into my slope-intercept form. So I have y equals, my slope is -2 over 5. I'm very careful not to forget the x, and then I'm going to put +3 for the y-intercept. Okay, we'll go over one more. Again, the first thing here, I'm going to find my slope using rise over run. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4. My rise is 5. My run is 1, 2, 3. Now my y-intercept here, I have to be careful here. Here's my y-axis, so this is my y-intercept. Since it's below the x-axis, that's going to give me a y-intercept of -2. So again, now that I have my two pieces, I'm going to plug it in. I have y equals, and I should have done this in color before, my m is my slope, so that's my 5/3. I'm very careful to still keep the x. And then I'm going to plug in for my b, the y-intercept. Again, I'm not going to put plus a minus. Since this is a -2, it's just going to be -2. All right, so the only other thing we have to cover here is quickly on the next page, looking at how we write equations of vertical and horizontal lines. And again, here's where kind of that acronym we learned before, right? Here we go, our VUX and our HOI was our other one. This is going to help us write these equations. So remember, we said vertical lines have an undefined slope and their equations look like x equals a number. Now our other ones here, we have our horizontal lines. Their slope is 0 and the equation looks like y equals a number. So this is going to help me remember if I can identify whether it's vertical or horizontal. This gives me an easy way of remembering if the equation is x equals or y equals. So if I look at my first example here, the first thing I notice is that I have a horizontal line, which makes me think that's my HOI. Once I remember HOI, I know my equation is y equals, and if I look, I have 1, 2, 3, my y equals 3. Now, in number 2, I see a vertical line here, which makes me think of our VUX. That reminds me, if I move this up, that my equation is x equals, and again I'm going over to the right 3 spots, so this is x equals 3. Alright, that's it for this video. You'll get some practice with this when we're back in class, and then we'll be quickly moving on to the next section.